If you are constantly waking your child up, constantly checking their grades, and constantly arguing about their future, you aren't a parent anymore. You become an alarm clock. And eventually, everyone learns how to hit snooze on an alarm clock. But here's the truth. Most parents are exhausted because they're trying to be the engine for a car they don't own. Today, we're talking about the motivation myth and how to stop being the engine and start being the architect. I'm Olay. I'm joined by Festus. You're listening to Edge Steps, powered by Laddering Your Success. Let's get into it. How you doing, Dave?
Man, doing great. And I love that. I love that open, man. It was just, mwah. It was beautiful.
For sure, brother. We're about to get into it, man. So if a student has zero motivation, that parent usually has the wheel. You have to move from being the manager, controlling tasks, to being the consultant. A manager is responsible for the work. A consultant is responsible for the wisdom, right? Let's go over one quick stat. 75% of high school students report negative feelings towards school, right? They're citing boredom or a lack of a clear why. So remember, control is just a temporary fix. Influence is a lifelong asset. If you have to be in the room for your child to do their homework, you have not taught them discipline. You've just taught them how to be managed. And my mind goes to the first three things that we teach when we do our workshops with students. I call it HDI: humility, discipline, and integrity. So Festus, in your experience, why is it so hard for a parent to let go of that manager identity, even when they see it isn't working?
I think the thing is this. One, we always have to give ourselves grace because parenting doesn't come with a handbook and a lot of life happens. So that's the number one thing. But number two is, as your child grows, you have to grow as well. And that becomes the biggest challenge, is keeping pace with their growth. And I'll talk a little bit about maybe some of the science behind it. And then I'll talk a little bit about just some practicality. So from a neuroscience standpoint, we know that neurotransmitters, meaning your brain and your nerves, in a nutshell, grow faster, or they grow the fastest from 0 to 5. And then they basically will lay down certain patterns then that are still malleable up until usually like age 12, 13, 14. And this is why at that age, your kid pretends like they know the world and everything that's in it and what's going on. And that's hard for parents because we've learned through the hard knocks. But that's what's going on with your child. But what's going on with you is your patterns are being further and further ingrained in your 20s, 30s, 40s. And so what happens is you're saying, hey, I know the world. They're saying, I think I know the world. And then there's this conflict. When in reality, as a parent, when your kid turns 10, that's your first time having a 10-year-old. When they turn 11, that's your first time having 11, and so on and so forth. So they're still learning that needs to be done there. Yeah. And the hard part sometimes is us learning as we teach. And that becomes some of the conflict in terms of student identity and the sense of purpose, right? Is I've never had a college student before, but I'm teaching somebody how to go to college when maybe I didn't go myself. And so let's talk about practically. Practically, this is where, your parenting style. Are you, hey, you go do it yourself? Or is it, hey, we're learning together, but I'm the authority? Is it you're going to do what I say as I say? And what ends up happening is depending on your parenting style, you end up owning all the outcomes, and then your child becomes indecisive. And so the more indecisive your child is, you own all the outcomes anyway.
Man, so powerful, man. I love that point. Is how parents, if you're not on that path of growth, for a lot of parents, you can get stuck in a role. And it just reminds me of folks who are like, they've been working in a role for so long and they're like, I hate this role. This role is not fitting it in for me. And so I think it goes to the earlier point about no longer being a manager and being more of a consultant. So I love that. And thank you for just the breakdown of like understanding how children process their world from a neuro standpoint. All right, so let's talk about clarity and truth. Most lack of motivation is actually a lack of clarity. If a student doesn't see how algebra connects to their bank account in the next 5 years, they're not lazy. They're just smart enough to not waste energy that feels something that feels useless. So you have to give them the why. And there's a quick thing I want all parents to understand about the why question, because that was, if you would have asked my parents what my name was when I was younger, it probably would have been why. And I had a revelation about this. The fact that I asked why so much is because I wanted to have a deep understanding of the world around me. And I see now how much that helped me when I became a teacher. Quick little note here. Jobs like engineering, jobs like being a counselor or a teacher, where you have to really dig deep and get down to answer something. I think when you hear children who ask a lot of why questions, if you can control it in a way, right, to where they're able to use this information or ask constructively, I think it gives you a real good synopsis or an idea of what your children can do in the future, right? So keep those things in mind. Really pay attention to what's at the DNA or the core of your child as they just function and they live their lives. So in LYS, if they don't know their own values, they won't have the fuel to move. A lot of folks talk about apathy that our kids are having these days, and it totally makes sense. When a young person has never been introduced to themselves, they have no engine, they have no place to go to explore or to find something that fits their be, to find or explore something that fits their knowing what's around them, and to execute that by knowing who they are and what's around them, right? So Festus, how do we distinguish between a student who is truly unmotivated and one who is just paralyzed by the fear of picking the wrong path?
Man, that's so powerful. I think one of the biggest things is, especially with dealing with apathy and a lot of students now, is the questions that they ask. I think you know everybody by the questions that they ask. So if you have a student who's not asking any questions, but making strong, I guess you could say, demands or inclinations towards certain things, that's a good place to start, right? One of the theories in relationship therapy is, how do you know a relationship is over? It's when a person becomes pretty much apathetic. They don't have any feelings any kind of way. Passion is usable, right? So even the child getting upset about going to school is usable, right? Because you can drive that passion to a thing. Hey, okay, you don't know why you're going to school. Let's go figure it out and drive that passion there. But when a student becomes apathetic, we have to find out where there is passion, where there is concern. Because again, education is to draw out from what is within them. And when you're able to draw those things out, you're better able to position them to find out what they care about. And parents, I get it. So all they care about is video games. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. Are we developing children that are multifaceted, are educated in multiple areas? You know what I mean? Are you taking them to the museum even though they say it's boring? Are you taking them to certain places for the sole purpose of sometimes exposure? Our oldest, he's in the art, and we got him an art set. He's drawing his Dragon Ball Z. I know he's not college age yet, but he's drawing Dragon Ball Z and those different types of things. That's great. That's his form of self-expression. And so we have to think about that as our kids get older and they're making this transition out of our homes, is, have I exposed my kids in enough areas so that we can channel that towards their education and say, hey, if you're interested in this, let's take more art classes. Let's align towards the career you ultimately want.
Man, thank you so much for that, Festus. I think for a lot of parents, there is a lot of fear, because you're in a state of, it's not necessarily I want my child to be my friend, but I want to establish a positive relationship with my child. And so because of that, parents, I think, let go of their reins just a tad bit too much in what they allow their kids to do. And I think there's some negatives to that. I think it's okay to pull the reins in. If a child acts out because of that, If they have a bad reaction to it, so be it. I think that for those things that are truly beneficial, it may hurt in the initially when it happens, but I think over time there'll be a benefit to them. Now, Festus, you can correct me. I don't have any kids, but I work with kids. And some of the things I did in my classroom, that's what it was. They didn't appreciate it, they didn't like it at the time, but over time I saw the benefit of it. And I think when you're trying to help kids to what you said, find that direction and who they really are, I think that's the key there. And it goes from the way we were raised. Why am I doing this? Because I said so. And it's like, all right, as long as it's in line with what you're trying to do, I think there's benefit to it.
Man, and I think you're bringing up a very good point just in terms of best. Shout out to The Pivot. I was watching The Pivot or listening to The Pivot, and John St. Brown was there. And for those who are familiar with him, he's multiple-time Mr. Universe, Mr. Olympian, and basically all three of his sons were able to make it to the NFL. And that's a huge feat to train somebody to, not just one person, to be in the very tip top of a professional area, but to train three people all to go to the tip top of their professional area. And one's definitely going to be a Hall of Famer for sure. And so the real thing is, he said he did not let his children choose when they were young, but as they got older, he started giving them a little bit more choice. And I think that's really powerful too, because again, a lot of the skills that are learned when you're young, you can further develop those skills as you get older until you're ready to make a choice, right? Basically an informed decision. And so that's the thing. If you're dealing with somebody who's in high school, they might be ready to make an informed decision, but they still may be underdeveloped in certain areas and habits, right? So if they're underdeveloped in certain study habits, as a parent, you got to deal with those as they're making that choice, right? And so part of this is choosing their circle for them. Hey, we're going to show up here together, whether you like it or you don't like it, because you don't know yet. And so part of it is also, as a parent, exposing them. Can you take your child to work? Can you sit with them with a family member who's in the field they want to be in? Can you help them find a mentor, take them to coffee with that mentor, all those different types of things.
I love it. I love it. Great points. Great points. All right. So let's jump into the do portion. All right. For parents, I'm giving you a 24-hour challenge. Perform an ownership audit. I want you to list 5 things that they're going to be 100% responsible for. No reminders, no safety nets. Let the consequence happen. All right. That's where motivation is born. You can't feel the need to steer if you don't feel the ship drifting. All right. So Festus, what do you think, just based off of this do activity that I gave for parents, what is the first thing a parent should say when their student fails one of these ownership tasks without stepping back into the manager role?
What did you learn? What did you learn?
Yeah.
Because then you get a chance to see where their mindset is, to see what they're thinking about. Then you get a chance to fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
Hey, you said you learned X, Y, Z. Let me fill in some gaps on some other things you didn't consider, you didn't know. No. Yeah. And then again, where did you learn that? Because again, as your child grows, they're learning not just from you, but from their other environments that they're in, school, clubs, different types of things like that. And sometimes parents can become investigators. Where'd you learn that? I'm going to go talk to that person, instead of saying, that's interesting that you learned that from archery camp.
Yeah.
Why did you feel like it was important to take that bit and piece of information?
Yeah.
You know, so there's certain things that I think when we ask questions more than tell, right, we can learn how to coach and guide better.
Man, thank you for that, Festus. I love that answer. That is so powerful. That's so. As you mentioned that, it was just like it's like discipleship. You know what I'm saying? It's like the path of taking someone, leading them to the water, but then showing them the fishing rod and saying, "This is how you start to fish for yourself." So I love that. I love that, man. We are doing amazing things, great things here with parents. A couple months ago, about 2 months ago, maybe, we did one of our scholarship kind of roundtable events where we had parents come in and we went over how to help parents succeed in paying for college for their students, right? Because that's one of the many things that we do here at Laddering Your Success. And with that being said, we've garnered a lot of really good attention, parents, great feedback. We actually had last week one of our contributors, one of our good friends, Dr. Jamal Crawford, bring his cousin and ask some questions about their daughter who's currently about to attend college next fall. So with that, shout out to Esther, who runs our WhatsApp group and is our parent liaison here at Laddering Your Success. She brought a question to me, and I wanted to take a couple seconds before we close out here to just go over that question, and hopefully it'll help that person and any other parent out there who's trying to figure out some things for their students as we make that transition from high school to post high school. All right, so I'm going to read it for you. My daughter is torn between 3 colleges and is looking for me to give guidance. I'm lost. I feel like I can't help. One school fits her personality and lifestyle. Another school is perfect for her on an academic level. And the third school is so over the top perfect for her and her career/internship opportunities due to location. Help! How do we choose? Oh, and financially, all 3 of these schools are the same price. So, Festus, with this situation here, it sounds like a great situation. It's almost sometimes Festus and I will have conversations and he'll say this, which is, it's just stuck in my head. It's all of our problems right now are good problems. And so I'm wondering about this. Outside of the cost, it seems like there's 3 colleges and there's a good fit between all those things. So what is your advice for this parent?
Yeah, definitely future oriented, right? Again, talking with certain people and people groups who are very frustrated with the American education system, as they start to describe what it should be, they end up describing aspects of what are already there. And so the thing is, you have to look to the future and say, hey, in the future, what's the world going to look like? None of us really knows, right? But which situation right now will prepare you for the best in a situation where none of us knows what the future is going to look like. And that's how I would go about making that decision. And so part of that is asking alumni who went there, hey, since you've graduated, what has been the biggest takeaways from graduating? You could do that, DM people on LinkedIn who went to the school, get with the school's graduation department and alumni board, go to some of those meetings. But just being able to check in with those people and say, okay, I might not have 100% clear 2020 vision. None of us do. None of us have a crystal ball. It's bad to live that life that way anyway. But you want to gather as much information as possible from those who've already been in those seats. So now, you're doing that in 3 different areas. That's a lot of work. So you have to start asking yourself, which one do I feel the least comfortable or least like it's worth it to do the work here? Because often that aligns with our desires. So if I have a strong desire to do the work here, but I don't have one over here, then that kind of lets me know I'm wanting this more. Now, what's the question? Why do I want that more than that? Right? What did I see? What did I pick up on? And so these will start to cue us in to be able to say, hey, I know this is the right way to go.
I love it. I'm not going to drop a bit of stuff in there. I think that is perfect enough for the parents to bite and chew on, man. So thank you so much for that. That's just great insights. All right, folks, that is our episode this week for EduSteps powered by Laddering Your Success, Parents Edition. Next week, we're going to be talking about faith, identity, and purpose in academic decisions. My name is Olay Shorunke. Thank you again to our wonderful founder, Festus Amoye, for being here for this latest episode of EduSteps. If you like what you're hearing, please comment. Let us know what situations or problems you're going through. Subscribe, comment, share it with someone who has a child, or if you're a school counselor out there and you're trying to get some good content for parents, great resource. We do this every week, so we're here for you. Once again, thank you so much for joining us on this latest episode of EduSteps powered by Laddering Success. Festus, go ahead and hit them with the phrase that pays.
So listen, there are legitimate excuses for not going to college. There's no legitimate excuse for not getting an education. Thank you for joining us on this episode, and we'll see you on the next episode.